What did Boise State just prove, losing by 17? That they belonged.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. One quarterfinal game down, 3 to go later today. We'll talk Notre Dame, Georgia later on today's show. And Quinn Ewers was offered, reportedly, a lot of money. I have some thoughts there. So, let's start with Boise State, though. Boise State played a game that was the inverse of Indiana or Tennessee, though Tennessee wasn't particularly close. This was more Clemson, Texas to me. Boise State belonged on the same field as Penn State. They were the second best team. I thought that going in. I thought Penn State would win and cover, keep Boise State at an arm's length. But if you play that game 10 times over, I don't think Penn State's winning all 9. All 9. It's a good start to the show. I don't think they're winning all 10. I think they might be winning 9, and Boise State didn't find the 1. But if you play that game 10 times over, is Maddox Madsen going to have 3 interceptions in every game? No. He might have 1 in every game, or at least in every other game. I don't think he would have 3. Would Ashton Jeanty fumble the ball once and almost twice? A lot of things that went against Boise State in that game were a credit to Penn State. It doesn't mean it's going to happen every game. You play that game 10 times, Boise State's not turned the ball over 4 times in every game. That's not something that happens there, but it happened in that one game because Penn State was better, which is how I felt going into it. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't disappointed by the outcome either. And I think that game gave a lot of fodder to 2 groups of people. Number one, the group that said Boise State shouldn't have been in the playoff or shouldn't have had a bye. Now, I could agree that they shouldn't have had a bye, but to say they shouldn't be in the playoff, didn't deserve to be there, that just clearly wasn't the case. Because that, unlike Indiana, who lost by 10, was a closer game than the scoreboard actually indicated. It was competitive, but there was a better team. Texas was better than Clemson, but there was still a competitive element to the football game. So I didn't think this was an embarrassing showing for Boise State, that it proves, see, you never shouldn't let a G5 team in at all, or it's just a Mountain West schedule, or it's just this, that, and the other thing. No, Boise State had a pretty solid resume, deserved to be in the playoff. I think they should have played a first-round game instead of getting a bye. But people are going to look at that 17-point final spread and say, see, oh, it wasn't close. Penn State didn't play a perfect game, but Boise State had far more errors and mistakes in this game than Penn State did. Penn State's biggest problem in this game was Andy Kotelnick. He refused to say, you know what, let's just hand the ball off to our running backs who are averaging over 7 yards a carry. Boise State kept forcing the ball to Ashton Jeanty because that's what you do when you have a great player in the backfield. He had 30 carries. Nick Singleton, Kane Allen combined for 29 in this game. That's insanity, okay? Jeanty was under 4 yards a carry and had more touches combined than Penn State's 2 great running backs. I thought that was pretty insane. They ran for 216 yards on the whole in that game. 221, yes, you heard me correctly, belonged to the running backs. Penn State could have run for 300 yards in this game. It's why I felt confident about them going in. So that's first. The second part that I don't think is one of my big takeaways from this game, but easily could be, is, well, see, Ashton Jeanty shouldn't have won the Heisman. Look at what he did against a real team. Well, if you're only judging top 5 teams in college football, top 6, Penn State was the 6th seed, it's all a jumbled mess, right? And hopefully it'll get fixed in 2025. We'll just have to wait and see if that actually comes to fruition there. But Penn State and Oregon are the best teams that Ashton Jeanty played this year. He ended the game with 104 yards, and we're considering that a down game. And by the way, I don't know how many running backs could have amassed 104 yards with the way that Penn State's defensive front was just absolutely dominating that Boise State offensive line. He had nowhere to go and still had a 100-plus yard game. And the other big-time opponent that Jeanty went up against was Oregon, and he had 190 yards. So I'm not going to come on here and knock on him in that particular spot either. So what comes next for Boise State is what comes next for any team that gets eliminated from the playoff here. Lick your wounds, feel sorry for yourself for a day or two, get up, and go back to work. and figure out how you can get better. How can you get to the same sort of level next season? How can you ascend from the level that they are currently at? But I tell you what, the whole SEC got robbed crowd, shh, they're very quiet. Like in a baby's bedroom, like, shh, gotta be quiet in there. They're being very quiet because they have to be quiet. The SEC tacked on in bowl season in games where you didn't have an overwhelming majority of opt-outs, let's just say. They tacked on a second loss to USC, who went 2-0 against the SEC this year. Remember how bad USC is? Well, two different quarterbacks were able to knock off respectable SEC teams this year. They stacked up a loss to Illinois, who, by the way, had their head coach calling out Lane Kiffin, saying, hey, what about the playoff case for Illinois if you're making it for Ole Miss over here? Well, they went out, beat South Carolina. It was a pretty darn good win. Illinois was traveling a lot further to that game in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl than South Carolina was. That was definitely more of a home game for South Carolina. It was a great crowd. I love seeing big crowds for bowl games that are not in the college football playoff. I think it's great. Celebrate the sport. Embrace traditions that are becoming new, like the Pop-Tarts mascot or the Cheez-It mascot doing all of this crazy stuff. I think it's awesome. It's fun. College football is great. The games were entertaining. They were exciting. But Alabama went out and lost to Michigan. And South Carolina did not get to 10 wins because of Illinois. Remember all that talk that you've heard many a times about, well, the Big Ten's very top-heavy. The middle of it just isn't as good. Well, it turns out Illinois, middle of the Big Ten or so, good team, just went out and beat a good team in South Carolina who shouldn't have been in the playoff. And Alabama should not have been in the playoff. The people arguing otherwise don't have a leg to stand on here. By the way, just for good measure, the SEC has tossed in a loss to Navy this bowl season. Navy. Oklahoma couldn't beat Navy. You know they're going to line up and run the ball, and they busted, I believe, the longest play in the history of Navy football. Anyway, they've been playing since the 19th century. Most of you probably can't even name the presidents that were around when Navy first started playing football. That's how long it's been, and Blake Horvath was able to break a big run anyway and win the football game. Again, good, competitive, fun football game. I have long been a proponent of SEC bias because it has been warranted. They have had better players. They have had better teams and better coaches. Like, that's the way it's always looked. But for this year, the argument doesn't hold any weight. So if you look at Boise State and say they should have had this team in or that team in, the biggest margin of defeat so far in the college football playoff belongs to the SEC. Boise State went out there with a team that hung around with the number one team in the country in Oregon, who's playing later today as this show airs. Boise State went toe-to-toe with Oregon, and they were competitive with Penn State. Yeah, they weren't as good as Penn State. They ended up losing by 17. That game was more competitive than that. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. And that whole crowd, it must have been a tough day for a lot of people over at ESPN that were saying, well, they just should have assessed more than this. They should have done. Nope. The committee got it absolutely right. It is clearly based on this season, the information we had, you cannot assess the eye test of who we think the best team is, and you should give it to the most deserving. And the 12 most deserving teams got into the college football playoff. And the SEC crowd didn't do themselves any favors. In fact, quite the opposite with how their teams have performed in the bowl season. You can make a bowl season whatever you would like. The Big Ten, I believe, last I checked, was 4-1 against the SEC in bowl season. Well, there are opt-outs, so they're this, right? Because that doesn't exist on the other side, right? That just doesn't happen anywhere else. So Boise State proved that they belong, and the SEC just kept showing us that, yeah, they should have had those 9-3 teams on the outside looking in. Alabama was not a playoff team. South Carolina was not a playoff team. Ole Miss, at their best, could have been a playoff team. But guess what? Didn't deserve it, didn't get in, and they shouldn't have. I know they haven't played their bowl game yet as I'm recording the show. I'm fully aware. But the argument was made on the basis of, well, the SEC is just so much tougher. 9-3, it's just not the same. Well, here we are. Navy, USC, again, Illinois, Michigan, all beat SEC teams. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at smclaughlincfb or at lockedon_CFB. So the playoff will continue. Notre Dame, Georgia, I think it's going to be fun. why the Fighting Irish win. That's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by Game Time. So the 12-team playoff is rolling along, bowl season is rolling along, and there are a bunch of other events you might want to go to. I'd recommend going to Game Time. I've used it before, and I'm telling you, it's really easy. They've got all the features, including Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks makes getting tickets for your favorite events even easier. Do you want to make it harder? No, make it easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So if you're looking for an upcoming game, browsing through deals, it's a breeze. You'll find all sorts of seats, all sorts of deals, and you can toggle their all-in pricing feature, show your total up front. That's the best part, frankly, about buying tickets with Game Time amidst their many great features. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think Notre Dame, Georgia is going to be a great game. I think Notre Dame wins. Here's why. We have so far seen in the college football playoff until this game officially kicks off. Heck, it might be going on as you're listening to or watching this particular segment. We have seen 5 games so far. There will be 2 played prior to Notre Dame, Georgia. And in the 5 games that we've seen in the playoffs so far, teams that outrush the other side are a perfect 5-0. They have no losses so far. And by the way, as it pertains to Oregon, Ohio State, in every meeting that they have had dating back to 2009, the team that runs for more yards has won the football game. Just saying. Just saying. I know that modern offense is all about throwing the football, but which ground game in this particular matchup do you trust more? Are you going with Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love, or are you going with Georgia and whatever they have been trying to cobble together in the backfield? I had higher hopes for Georgia. Now, they were my preseason pick to win the SEC and the national championship, but they are now dealing with an offense that is void of Carson Beck because of an injury. Now, we have seen backups propel teams to a national championship before. I watched Cardale Jones as the third stringer do it for Ohio State back in the first iteration of the 4-team playoffs. So maybe there's a poetic nature to college football such that in the first year of the 12-team playoff, a non-starting quarterback will also lead a premier brand to a national championship run. Perhaps. I expect this game to be close. I expect this game to be competitive, but I expect Notre Dame to win because I trust their ability to run the football far more than I trust Georgia's. Now, the Bulldogs have been good defensively this year, defending the run. Notre Dame has been really good defensively this year, defending the pass. They've been okay defending the run. Georgia has also been, I'd say, good, statistically not great, 128 yards a game. Nothing wrong with that, but nothing special. Doesn't feel like 2021 or 22 Georgia defensively, but they have certainly been good. And they played very well against an offense in Texas that I think is better from a ceiling standpoint than what Notre Dame is going to be able to put on the field. But when you take Georgia's strength away, and you now might have to lean more into the strength of Notre Dame. I just don't see it. I don't see this game having a lot of points. But when Georgia's offense has been at its best this year, Carson Beck's been going crazy. Maybe Gunnar Stockton's going to go out there and make me eat my words. But maybe I'm going to look back and say, boy, I didn't believe in him. I didn't know enough about him. We just didn't know, and he has surprised me. Maybe that'll happen. My guess, in a college football playoff spot, that's asking a lot. This is a Notre Dame team that I've been talking about for a while. Has been playing really good football, but has just been flying under the radar because they lost to Northern Illinois, and back in the BCS era, that probably would have kept them out of the national championship picture, and Georgia would have gotten in to face Oregon. Instead, you've got the 12-team playoff, and they're in controlling their own destiny. That's the world we've chosen. I'm at peace with it now. People are seeing the flaws. Welcome to the dark side, folks. But Notre Dame has been a really good football team over the second half of the year. And yeah, they beat Indiana by 10 points. That game was not as close as the 17-point game that Penn State and Boise State played last night. So Notre Dame, I think, can do enough. Like, I mean, which quarterback do you trust more in this game? Gunnar Stockton, Riley Leonard. That's Riley Leonard every day of the week and twice on Wednesday, which is when this game is, of course, being played. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is if you remove what the best of Georgia's offense has been, which is Carson Beck, maybe they lean on the running game a little bit more. Well, they haven't done that a whole heck of a lot. But you were already going to be strength on strength with Georgia's passing attack and Notre Dame's passing defense, which has been stellar this year and looked really good against a vaunted passing attack in Indiana. They had their home crowd. They had the weather behind them. Sure, that can help Gunnar Stockton a little bit more, that they don't have to play this game in South Bend. But suddenly, I'm supposed to believe he's going to go out and just torch the Notre Dame defense and do enough. This could be a game where a defensive score ends up deciding it. Now, a defensive score could decide any game. But the way I feel about both these teams defensively and what they bring to the table offensively, which is enough, but it's not a lot, you could look up and say, wow, that defensive touchdown, the defense scored as many touchdowns as the offense did. I suspect both teams are going to be under 27 points in this game. I will be more than a little stunned. I've been shocked before, but I will be more than a little stunned if this game, with these two defenses and these two defensive minds, and what you've brought to the table offensively, if they find a way to both be over 30 points, I'll throw up my hands and say, you know what? Everything's a crapshoot. Everything is a roll of the dice, overs and unders on FanDuel. I just pick them at random because you just can't predict that sort of stuff. Now, this line has been close for the entire time that the game has been available to bet for the public. The over-under is at a meager 45.5. That's not really hard to predict. I would take the under here. I would. I'm taking Notre Dame to win. They are 1.5 point underdogs, so that automatically means I think they'll cover, but I think having this game close to a pick'em is about right. I think it'd probably be Georgia -3, maybe 4, potentially pushing 5, but probably in the 3-4 range, maybe 3.5 if Carson Beck were playing, but that's a hypothetical, and, well, the SEC and hypotheticals, let's just not go down that road for this particular game. So I'm taking Notre Dame to win, which means I'll take Notre Dame to cover. I'm taking the under, though. I think this is a tough, hard-nosed, grind it out, slugfest sort of football game. 23-17, Notre Dame wins the football game. I just cannot trust a backup quarterback with as limited of experience as Gunnar Stockton has against that Notre Dame defense, which has been playing exceptionally well. Go look at the way they have played against a variety of opponents and a variety of styles. You had the rushing attacks of Army and Navy, which I hope SEC fans are not about to dog on since Navy just picked up a win against the SEC. The way that they have played against all sorts of teams has really been impressive. They look fast, they look well coached, they look well schemed, they make tackles, and Georgia can do all of those things too. But if you're coming down at the end of the day in a close game, I think I trust Kirby Smart more than Marcus Freeman just because they've been there before. But I trust Riley Leonard over Gunnar Stockton more than I take Kirby Smart over Marcus Freeman. So I'll take Notre Dame to win the game 23-17. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It should be a wildly entertaining and fun football game. Before I talk a little off-season content, other predictions as well. I believe that Texas wins. I think Arizona State covers. They'll be the first double-digit underdog to do so far in the college football playoff. I think Oregon wins by a field goal, but that, like this Notre Dame-Georgia game, is a coin flip. I feel better about Notre Dame beating Georgia than I do Oregon-Ohio State. How are you feeling? Hey, you let me know. You drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm feeling a certain way about Quinn Ewers getting a reported, oh my gosh, $6 million offer. Oh, man. This is just getting out of control. Will it get reined in? I don't know. But Quinn Ewers, thoughts on that coming up next. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can pick which players are scoring a touchdown, how many points each team will score, the total amount of points scored in the game, who's winning, by how many. I mean, everything that you want is over there at FanDuel. And if you want to bet these college football playoff games or anything else, guess what? FanDuel's the place to go. Nope, nowhere else that I'd tell you to go. FanDuel.com to join today. That's where you go. Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. All you have to do is maybe pick one of these playoff games right. Do you know who's going to win? Are you 100% certain? You go put $5 down. That's your first bet. It hits. Boom, $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I'm not an economist, but I think I have a fundamental, basic understanding of economics. I took some classes in college. I even minored in that in college. So there's a baseline understanding there that I'm going to lean on here for a moment. When a new product emerges into a market and it's a hot commodity and demand skyrockets for that particular item, demand goes up, price goes up. Eventually, though, the supply responds or demand lessens over time and the price comes down. So we have now seen Darian Mensah go to Duke for a reported $4 million a year. That's a guy who has one season of starting experience. He did very well at Tulane this year. He's in the mid-60s completion percentage, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was good. Duke, though, said, we'll give you $4 million a year for the next 2 years, $8 million total to play quarterback at Duke, a basketball school. Quinn Ewers, reportedly, has gotten an offer to forego the NFL draft, come back to college, hit the portal, and go somewhere for $6 million. For one season. $6 million. Right now, because there is so much, there's a power vacuum of sorts in the college football landscape. You have seen schools like SMU go and fill that void and say, hey, all you need is the right amount of money, and you can't buy a national championship right away, but you can buy relevance and success right away. And it seemed like they were able to do that. They went out, ACC runners-up, make the college football playoff. After winning the American last year, their transition was pretty seamless. And they got into the ACC, remember, because they had the money to take $0 in media rights revenue. So the power vacuum that has been filled by a variety of schools and behind-the-scenes players is offering what feels like an obscene amount of money for quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers is not worth $6 million a year. He is a good college quarterback. I would be willing to pay if I were running an NIL collective and I had, let's say, a budget of $15 to $20 million, which is the upper end, by the way, of annual payrolls for NIL. Remember, all the reports before the season, none were explicitly confirmed, but the general consensus appears to be that Ohio State's roster this year costs about $20 million in NIL. Would you be better off? This is where Bill Belichick at North Carolina becomes somewhat interesting because he's dealt with a salary cap situation, and the House settlement, of course, gets to add another element to all of this for colleges across the country. But if you had $20 million in NIL, would I spend $6 million on Quinn Ewers? No, I would not. Because if Will Howard cost me 2 to 3, that's a far better investment. Far better investment. And I'm not advocating that schools go out and treat their NIL collectives and the dollars that they do have there as if they're the Oakland A's circa 2003 with Moneyball. I'm not saying they, try to just find the right. No, you got to be able to spend at least a little bit or you're not going to get a necessary return. But this feels to me like the demand, because of the power vacuum, is really, really high. And the idea of a $6 million quarterback in college, that doesn't add up to me. It really does not. with the amount of dollars that are available, I don't see a quarterback like Quinn Ewers being worth $6 million. Would I pay 4? Sure. That's the upper limit. That is the absolute upper limit. This is not a guy who has ever been a Heisman Trophy finalist. That sort of dollar figure for a guy playing quarterback, you should be guaranteeing, you should get a Cam Ward type performance. And I do not believe Quinn Ewers is capable of delivering that. He can be one of the 10 best starting quarterbacks in all of college football, but go ask any Longhorn fan right now if they'd be willing to pony up that much money to keep Quinn Ewers at Texas for another year. I guarantee you, people who have watched this guy for the last several seasons would say, nah, we'd rather go with Arch. We've seen what Quinn Ewers can be. Time to go in a different direction. I'm not here advocating that Quinn Ewers is some bum who is not worthy of being a Power 4 starting quarterback next year. Heck, I hope he comes back. He could make it's interesting. He's a familiar face. This is something that college football is able to do. This is one of the upsides, frankly, of NIL, is you can bring these sort of guys back and have that familiarity for fans. College basketball has been missing that forever. The one and done, not a good thing for college basketball. But college football, you get to know these guys a little bit more, and it makes it more exciting to watch it. But at least that's just where I come from, or one particular angle to look at it. But it feels right now like we're in the early stages of this new era of college football. The demand is skyrocketing because everybody wants to be good. If they just invest enough money, they feel like they're going to be able to get there, and sometimes they will. But $6 million a year does not sound like the going rate for a quarterback of Quinn Ewers' caliber. That's the sort of high-end figure that if you're trying to allocate your NIL resources effectively to have a national championship caliber, playoff caliber team, you would need to have someone that is having a Jaden Daniels type season, Cam Ward, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Those are the guys who'd be worth that much. But currently, the general estimate amongst the agent community is, at least from the ones that I've talked to, there are about a handful of guys worth that are getting $3 million or more. But the going rate for a good starting quarterback, a capable starting quarterback, Matt Rule said a while back, it's over $1 million. That is true. It's in the $2 million range right now. 6 per year feels like a dramatic overcorrection and overvaluation. But have we seen NFL teams for a long time give money to quarterbacks that don't deserve it? Yes. So I can look at that and say, I wouldn't want my team to give Quinn Ewers $6 million and say that's the starting quarterback, because if that's a significant drain on the NIL resources, there are players available in the transfer portal or coming out of high school where those funds can be better allocated. Or roster retention, for instance. Illinois, they're on an NIL collective. I was texting Sonny Verma of Locked On Illini about this. He said, yeah, it feels like they're really focused on player retention, keeping guys here, having them forego opportunities to go to the NFL draft to stay at Illinois. They could return a lot of starters next year. Illinois could be a really good team. But bringing in a new guy, which always has some element of risk, and you're going to have a bit of a feeling out phase, or make some adjustments in the early portion of the season. Go look at what Oregon's offense was with Dylan Gabriel in their first 2 games compared to what it was for the next 11 that they have played so far as I'm recording the show. It's different. It's different, and there's an adjustment in there. So I saw that report, and at first I thought, it's probably fake. No, someone has said we think he's worth that much. That feels like the market is ballooning up, and eventually I think there will be a deflation of it. I don't know when. Or maybe I'm wrong, and that's where the market's going to get set to. And I'll look at offers like that the same way I look at the Giants paying Daniel Jones and say, you're not serious. Like this isn't going to work out. Not worth that much. Dak Prescott. That's what Quinn Ewers feels like to me. Dak Prescott. If he were to get that much money, he's good. He's not good. He's not good enough for that much. And guess what? Cowboys are nowhere near a Super Bowl and are not going to be in the near future because they have to pay Dak all that money. So if a place truly has an unlimited amount of NIL, yeah, they could do it. I suppose. But if you're operating with any sort of constraint, I don't think that Ewers is a guy who I'd give $6 million a year to. End of rant. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.